It could be that Ukraine is losing the war with Russia. It's refreshing to have an honest headline on the topic, huh? Ukrainian comedian Vladimir Zelensky played the nation's president in a popular TV series before actually getting the top job. Here he is photographed on the set of a movie in Kyiv in 2019. Now, as president, he oversees Telemarathon, the single legal television news program in Ukraine. Like his earlier comedic roles, many Ukrainians see the propaganda on Telemarathon as yet another work of fiction. There is much talk lately about the need to preserve democracy. If believing in a democracy means, among other things, that the government is telling the truth to the people, we are missing at least one key element of democracy in America. When it comes to the war in Ukraine, we, like the Ukrainian people themselves, have been sold a bill of goods. Ukrainians, however, are a step ahead of Americans in that overwhelming majorities of them are rejecting the lies that their government is dishing out to them. Americans still accept many of the lies about the war in Ukraine that we get from our accepted sources of information. The New York Times here in the US and the Telegraph in the UK, early and consistent supporters of flooding weapons in to fight the Russians in Ukraine, are now admitting that the war, as it drags on, finds overwhelming majorities of Ukrainians rejecting the TV news they get from their government as nothing but propaganda. Since 2022, the Ukrainian democracy Americans are defending with tens of billions of their tax dollars has only allowed one television program to broadcast everything they hear about the war. The only news program legally broadcasting in the country is called Telemarathon United News. It's a weapon, President Zelensky of Ukraine said last year when Telemarathon became the only source of information allowed. Telemarathon is allegedly a consortium of all the channels previously in existence, and it operates 24/7. Whenever Ukrainians turn on their television sets, viewers now say that the station provides nothing but war propaganda. Unfortunately, even though the U.S. has a plethora of TV stations and other media, most of the news they broadcast to U.S. viewers regularly is the news they all get one way or the other from Telemarathon. Everyone is fed up with this picture that says, "We're winning, everyone likes us and gives us money." Oksana told the Times. She heads up the Kyiv-based Institute of Mass Information. "It's all state propaganda," she declared. The station was initiated by Zelensky's decree, with no input or discussion in parliament. Any television stations that opposed the war or disagreed in any way with Zelensky's policies were barred from joining Telemarathon. How democratic, right? We're defending democracy. The program's coverage of the recent Ukrainian counteroffensive, widely seen around the world as having been a failure, described instead a campaign that was winning battle after battle. Ukrainian forces are described as professional, skilled, smart, and effective, while Russian forces are described as bungling and disarray and unable to fight effectively. How those disoriented and poorly trained troops now seem to be winning the war is not an issue at Telemarathon that Telemarathon addresses. Opinion polls show that less than 15% of the population believes the propaganda the program beams out to the country. Almost 75% of the political figures appearing on the network come from Zelensky's Servant of the People Party. Few other voices are ever seen or heard. Ukrainians tired of war and calling for peace negotiation, meanwhile, risk arrest as traitors, which is exactly how they are described on the Telemarathon network. Never covered on Telemarathon, as on most U.S. television networks, is the issue of who is making money off the war in Ukraine, particularly the armaments makers and fossil fuel networks. Weapons companies, for example, are having a field day in Ukraine, where they are testing all kinds of new and lucrative arms for use in current and future wars around the world. A quick end to the war would hurt their unprecedented profit making. That's why these companies are pushing for congressional approval of the Biden administration's request for $50 billion more to fund the war in Ukraine, hoping to extend it well into the future. It amounts to U.S. taxpayers paying for the profit making and arms testing parties underway in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the right-wing press in Europe, led by the Telegraph in the UK, is lamenting what it sees as a coming Russian victory. The foundations of Europe are trembling, the newspaper wrote in an editorial in December, as Putin closes in on victory, is a widely circulated opinion article from the end of 2023. Telegraph columnist Richard Kemp declared Ukraine is losing, but the UK must stand by it. We know that a Russian victory is becoming increasingly possible because Zelensky himself has said so. And President Biden also is saying it can happen if Ukraine doesn't get his extra $50 billion. The US and NATO pushed since the end of the Cold War to extend their power right up to the borders of Russia and into former Soviet republics. They counted on fear and on Russophobia to help them get away with the expansion. And now the world is paying the price for that recklessness with the growing danger of wider war. With the United States leading the charge against Russia and Ukraine and elsewhere, how much room is there for compromise and the construction of peace as everyone sees that the right-wing oligarchs in Ukraine have failed to do their part in defeating Russia? What dangers grow as Biden tries to grapple with the disastrous results of his war policy in Ukraine? How do the forces in Ukraine, the United States, and Europe that lied to the people in their countries by telling them this was a war for democracy and not a proxy war for geopolitical advantage by the United States and NATO, react now that they may lose their war? How those questions are answered is cause for real worry. Skipping forward, the article goes on. How does this narrative we have been fed fit with the new admissions that Russia may be winning? Or stories that thugs are snatching people off the streets to fill the ranks of the Ukrainian army? As the fog of lies lifts, we see that Russia had more troops and artillery than the press previously reported, and that the sanctions that were supposed to destroy the Russian economy have backfired. It won't be long before the people of the United States learn about another lie they have been told. The lie that there are no fash in Ukraine, particularly in the country's leadership. There are many fash there, and unfortunately, they have been emboldened and strengthened by the U.S. and NATO policy carried out in the name of democracy. We must not fear learning the truth, however as distasteful as it might be, because it is only the truth that will make us and the people of Ukraine free. Please go on and read that article in its entirety. For time constraint reasons, I did have to skip over large portions. You can follow People's World at People's World on Twitter. Daily news beholden to working people, not corporate interest. Analysis with class. We take sides. Yours. You can go to peoplesworld.org to see the article or find out more.